from a veterinary perspective, I must be honest. I look at, I leave the habitat and everything like that to the ecologists. I pretend not to know too much about it, but I look at the disease situation. What diseases are they likely to be exposed to that they're perhaps not used to when they get to the new area, as well as parasites. And I think we underestimate, what impact parasites and disease can have on naive animals. And I think it's quite a critical component when you're selecting animals that need to go to a new area, especially that far. We're going across the equator, and things will be very different. Rhino have to adapt.
I think your hand might be frozen again.
Okay, there's one. Maybe I can just think if people can hear me. I mean, it was quite a harsh lesson for me. Beginning of last year, when 3 white rhino were moved up from the western side of South Africa, which is pretty dry, semi-arid.
Yeah, and you just popped up very suddenly. Dave, do you want to just continue?
Yeah, very few external parasites in the form of ticks and things, and they were brought from the western side of the country up into our part of the country up here, KwaZulu-Natal, which is rife with ticks, rife with insects. It's hot, it's humid, very different climatic conditions to what these rhino were used to. And before we even knew it, one of the rhino actually died from nothing more than just a tick infestation, where the tick bites got so infected that it was quite horrific to see. Fortunately, the other 2 rhino, we were able to intervene and treat them, and it's good for them in terms of the nutritional quality or not is a different matter. But they love green grass. They definitely will take to it, and the shorter the better.
Okay, fantastic. So my next question would have been related to diseases and parasites. What diseases and parasites are endemic, but we can handle that maybe together with another question in the chat. Have you encountered the situation of relocating rhinos into a tsetse fly infested habitat? If so, how did you manage the situation without recording a death in the couple of months?
Unfortunately, we actually have recorded a death in Garamba. And yes, it is a big concern. I think that rhino, especially black rhino anyway, are inherently resistant to what is an African disease. White rhino, I think less so, because I just happen to have seen more clinical cases in white rhino than elsewhere. And it is a concern, and this is the reason why when we've been in the past, when we've been taking rhino up to areas where there are tsetse flies, and they're likely to be exposed to relatively high densities of tsetse flies, we've relocated them either from KwaZulu-Natal into where we have tsetse flies. They may not be the same species, but there are tsetses. We've got 2 species here, and we do have trypanosomes, which affect the cattle quite badly, and they can affect rhino, although we seldom see any clinical cases except in rhino that are introduced into this area. So this is a nice kind of like staging post, is to bring them down here, let them get exposed to tsetses, and then move them into a tsetse area. But then even then, take precautions. I mean, some of these places, for instance, Lwandi National Park in Malawi, there are lots of tsetse flies in those mountains and hills. And you want to try and reduce especially initially, reduce the exposure to tsetse. So you can do that with strategically placing traps around the release area. It's worked very well in Akagera. We haven't had a problem there at all with trypanosomes. We haven't had a problem in Tanzania either with admittedly they were black rhino. And then in Garamba, yes, unfortunately we did have a mortality. If there was going to be one rhino that was going to be affected by trips, it was that one. It was a youngster who had just been weaned. There was a lot of stress involved. He was being bullied a little bit by a bull. So yeah, it's unfortunate that there was one loss, but I think it's almost like what we've expected, and the reason why we're taking precautions by exposing them to tsetse flies down here in KwaZulu-Natal.
Thanks, Dave. Kester, please add your comment.
Yeah, so I mean, it's quite a hard thing to quantify. We are learning all of the time. what I think we have worked out is that sort of blocking animals before we move them is probably not a good idea. We want animals to be, newly translocated animals to be exposed, and more importantly, a trickle exposure of all the local diseases, be it trypanosomiasis or babesias or anything else. So I think probably the key message in all of this is most of these diseases are treatable. And the critical thing is monitoring. You need to see those animals every single day, and somebody who knows what a healthy rhino looks like and what a sick rhino looks like. And if it's sick, you immediately mobilize it. You have a microscope on hand, and you treat for whether it's a tick-borne disease or fly-borne disease. You need to have the capacity, and more importantly, the treatments to be able to to mitigate it, and you want them to, if it is totally different to the source site, you want them to build up an immunity over time. So quite often it is literally just in the first few months, perhaps an overload of Glossina flies or something else, and they can get sick, while they're adapting and while there's low-grade stress. But the important thing is to keep monitoring and to have the ability to be able to treat animals at short notice.
Thanks, Kester. Dr. Patrick, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. These are very good insights into the disease situations to take care of. The beauty is we walked the Ajai Wildlife Reserve. Is a 166 square kilometer reserve. It has significantly low sese densities, but we are going ahead to place strategically some sese traps. Initially, we are starting with deploying about 700, and then subsequently we shall add more there. But away from, from diseases transmitted by vectors, there are some experiences with, the soil-borne organisms that can also be potentially dangerous to rhinos. We are talking Clostridium, we are talking anthrax spores in the soil, and probably others. There are some experiences in recipient areas where rhinos came down with some of those conditions, given their feeding habits, which is, they graze short grass, and potentially they can uproot this grass and take in quite some significant amount of soil as well in the process. Thank you.
Patrick, that's a very good question. And just to answer it in regarding the clostridial effects, Clostridia has never been seen to be a problem in large free-ranging areas like the areas I'm used to working in. You had down in Umfolozi, which you saw from pictures from the professor. I think places like Kruger National Park, Clostridia has never been an issue. However, in some of these smaller areas, which are more intensely managed, it is an issue, and it can be an issue, and people actually vaccinate regularly. We have annual vaccinations against sort of multiple Clostridias. Anthrax is prevalent, for instance, in the northern parts of Kruger. There's not a lot of rhino there, but rhino, yes, they are susceptible to it, and obviously they will contract it if it's around, and they can succumb to it. But it certainly hasn't been a factor in Kruger National Park. It also is not a factor in where it also occurs, and that's in places like Namibia in the Etosha area, and as well as in the Kalakari area in northern South Africa. So I don't think I'd be too concerned about it, not in a large area like it, unless you've been picking it up in other species, other herbivore species anyway. So I wouldn't worry.
I think maybe for Dr. Dave again, a veterinary question. If you cross borders, they say the animals must be free of external and internal parasites. But a lot of people believe that it's not a good thing to take all the internal parasites out, because they need them, the gastrophilus, for its digestion. So how do you, I mean, you don't want to take them all out, but they stipulate that you have to take them out. What is his opinion on that? What is he doing?
Was that question for me, Willem?
Yes.
Maybe I should answer that question out of this forum. But I agree 100% with you. And these rhinos come with parasites. Gastrophilus, for instance, they actually form an integral role, and we don't believe in removing them from the stomach lining, because I've seen what can actually happen, the ulcers that develop afterwards, all sorts of complications. So it's one of those things that I don't think you can ever certify an animal free of external, internal parasites. It just doesn't, it's impossible. They'll always have something. So all you can do is, and the way I do it is I do a token administration of an anthelmintic that doesn't affect any Gastrophilus. Anyway, there's always these things that I think veterinarians share amongst themselves, but we know that something like a Gastrophilus is not going to cause any international incident and diseases and et cetera, as long as we make sure that those animals are not going to be responsible for an outbreak of a disease that can affect likewise animals or other herbivores or whatever. And I can't even think of one. So, which is why we don't vaccinate the rhino or anything like that prior to movement. And even trying to import rhino into Australia, for instance, where they are very, very restrictive in terms of what comes in and goes out. It is possible, and it's just something I would never be concerned about, particularly in Africa. We live in Africa. The rhino live in Africa. We live with African diseases, and that's what these rhino have got, and equally so up in Uganda. So there's just nothing that I feel that the rhino from, say, for instance, South Africa can bring into Uganda that anyone should have any concern about. And I'd be happy to take a Ugandan rhino down to South Africa. I wouldn't have any concerns either. So, yeah, that's my answer. But it is a very pertinent question. And I don't think you're going to get the veterinarians, the state veterinarians anyway, to change anything. That's what they put on their certificates. Must be certified free of internal and external parasites. And that's it. So, yeah, we do what we do.
Thanks, Dave. You must
And
let me know. Let me know if you want to take any answers offline with, say, for instance, Dr. Patrick.
Just can I throw one thing about external parasites and so on. I think I ideally agree that you cannot have a very clean rhino without internal and external parasites. And in any case, you wouldn't want to cause an endemic instability by doing all the dewormings and so on, and literally trying to create a very naive situation. And yet the destination, could be harboring the same kind of external parasites and internal parasites. But I think it's much to do with the question of the law. If you look at the Animal Diseases Act in most countries, it does give conditions for veterinary import permit. And there has to be that assurance that the animals are coming from areas that are free of certain diseases. So different countries have, their different list of diseases, and of course, state control notifiable and all this, but of course also domesticating some of the requirements from the World Organization for Animal Health. So I think it becomes important that when movements across border is being done, there should be basic screening for some of the diseases the importing country would want to be sure of. Otherwise, saying, the animals should be free of internal and external parasites is a very tall order. And I like the way he put it, that we all live in Africa, the rhinos live here. So we share a lot in common. And even to me, that ideally doesn't worry me a lot. But we need to meet the legal requirements and do the basic screening for reassurance that the animals are free of those diseases listed. Thanks.